Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and I am very happy to welcome back John Barclay. Hey John.
Hello, Nicole. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, absolutely. John is here to present how he is incorporating the new texture effects into his creative workflow, and I'm super excited to see what he's been doing with it.
Great. Well, welcome to everybody. Thanks for and spending a little bit of your day with me here. Hopefully we can shed a little bit of light on this crazy good new piece of software. I've been chatting with my friends at Topaz about the need for something better in the texture world, and they've hit a home run. Recently they've been hitting a lot of home runs with impressions and glow and now texture effects. So thank you to Nicole and the team at Topaz for giving me another opportunity to play, because this particular one is really truly play. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so what are we going to cover? We'll cover the interface a little bit of the new texture effects. Introduce you to how to add your own textures, which is a huge thing for me. I'm a huge fly paper textures fan. And so I wanted to make sure to put many of those in, and we'll show you how to do that and how to use those and create your own look. And we'll also talk about how to create easy looks with already pre-done presets, if you will, for you. And you can even share some of those online with the new community that they have. But, you know, the way I see texture effects is it's really like a new box of crayons. My friend Jack Davis talks about that. You know, he's so good in the creative side, and it's like a new box of crayons and all the fun you can have with it, and that's how I see this. So again, just a little philosophical thought here for those who haven't been with me before in a webinar. You know, my job is not necessarily to make the most beautiful pictures today. I really believe my job is to give you tools and information that'll help you open up the creativity within your own work. So just some concepts is what I'd like to try to be able to present today. So enough of that. Let's get busy. So let's go over here. I'm in Lightroom. If you know Lightroom, you can edit in, and we can go down to Topaz Texture Effects. You can also open it in into Photoshop and go that way. Matter of fact, I'll do that on an image just so that we can see all the ways that you can operate within Texture Effects, or how to get to it, if you will. All right, so what do we have? You know, top left is a login to the community. I'm not going to spend much time or any time really with the community. There's a couple of ways to get in there. If you go up to the right side here, you'll see different ways you can pan. You can see the original image by clicking on and off, or if you just click on the image, you can turn it on and off, or to the original toggle, I guess I should say. Zoom in and out, you can fit it to the screen, you can show it 100%. You can browse whatever group you have here, and then all the way to the right, these three dots, you do want to take a look at those. It gives you other ways to look. So we're looking at the collections. I can look at it by tags, or I can search, which is kind of nice, because if you are connected to the community at the same time, and you type in Nicole, for instance, or John Barclay, or whoever is uploading their own created looks, you'll be able to find all the looks that I've created, or Nicole has created, or you have created, what have you. So that's how you can search here, or you can search for a look. For instance, I can type in forest, and I can see if there's anything that has forest in the name. For instance, you might have found a look that you really liked, and you can't remember, but you knew it had the word forest in it, and that'll help you to find something quickly. Let's go back and look in the collections tab. If we open this up, we'll see all the different collections that have been created, including my effects, which I may have created. Notice here, now that you see this created look, this little share to the community is right here, this particular little icon of the three, just before the heart in the trash can. And if you clicked on that right now, then you could upload that effect that you created with the community and name it and so forth. But let's go back here and look at maybe some favorited looks that I've picked, and we can pick one And let's go down here. So it has one that has a fairly strong look. So first and foremost in Texture Effects, what makes it so much fun is for the beginner who doesn't want to take time or learn how to create their own look, there is a lot of content in here. There's tons of textures built in. So you can click on these looks and get beautiful finished looks right away. As most of you know, however, I'm a big fan of creating my own looks. And so we'll show you how to do that in a second, but let's kind of go through the progression here. If I find a look that I like, you'll notice that there's a bunch of sliders that pop up. That is going to bring me to the area where I can fine-tune or tweak the look. So I'm going to go ahead and click on those sliders. And that opens up now the details of what was used to create this look. So basically you see here there was a basic adjustment, a texture layer, another texture layer, a split tone layer, a basic adjustment layer. Let me turn those off. Just like in Photoshop, these eyeballs can be turned on and off. So if I go through and turn all these off, you'll see what each of these layers, if you will, adjustment layers do. So the first one adjusts the tone of that image a little bit. Then there was a texture added. Then there was another texture added. Then some split toning, which gave it a slightly different look. And then another basic adjustment to give you the finished look. What's important for you to know is that any of these can be turned on or off or thrown away to further enhance the look to be whatever you want to do. So if you didn't like the split tone, fine, you can turn it on and off, or I can just go to the trash can and throw it away. And now I've taken it out of the stack. And then if I wanted to, if I didn't like the basic adjustment that was created, I can go in and tweak this basic adjustment and make it whatever I want it to be. So once again, a preset or an effect, as they're calling it in Texture Effects, is nothing more than somebody's recipe that they created, and it's typically going to be based on a specific image. It may or may not apply perfectly or well, but it might be a really good start, and then you now should go and see what each of these panels are doing and then fine-tune from there. Okay, so that's a little introduction. We'll get into the meat of some of the, like for instance, if we open up texture, there's a whole lot going on in here. We'll delve into that a little more to give you even more control. What's amazing about Texture Effects is really the amount of control that you have and the power to create not just textures, but light leak and dust and scratches and edge control and vignettes. I mean, it really, everything's right there. Okay, but what about if we wanted to just create an effect of our own from scratch? Well, let's just hit the reset button. I'm at the top right. I can hit the reset and hit OK, and I'm going to be back to an empty dialog here. And now all I do is I pick the adjustment that I want to make. And in this case, I've already done in Lightroom, I've really prepared this particular image as I wanted to. But if you wanted to do some basic adjustments, a normal thing to do would be open that basic adjustments, which will let you lighten it, brighten it, affect the shadows, and so forth, and even shift some colors. But in this case, I really just simply want to get a texture. And this is also a lot of upfront. We'll do a lot more work here on images. Just give me a second to go through some of the details here so that you're all on board and how everything works. So it comes with a lot of content and a lot of textures, and it's broken down, if I open this up, into different color wash and bokeh. Those are some of the ones that you're going to get from Topaz, Urban Grit, and so forth. And when I do that, I'm not looking at everything. I'm able to look at these specific textures or looks, effects again, created by these particular textures. Now you'll notice here, again, I said I'm a flypaper fan. I've gone ahead and put in my different purchases of flypaper, flypaper 1, flypaper 2, the Painterly, the some, all these different ones. How did I get these flypaper textures and others, or textures that you might photograph on your own and want to create your own folder? How do you get those in there? Well, that's simple. This here to the right of where the list of the textures are, and you're going to hit this down arrow into a box, and that's going to give you a list. Yours will show immediately this texture category, add category rather. And so you would simply do that. You would add the category, name it, flypaper or my personal textures, whatever you want to call it. You would hit OK, and at that point it would be highlighted. So let's say it was flypaper, it would be the highlighted one, and this is what's in that particular folder. Notice, if there's a bunch of textures you don't necessarily use, you can throw those away if you'd like to by hitting the trash can. And so you can get rid of stuff that you don't tend to go to. Or if you wanted to now import into this new folder you've created, you simply hit import. You will then navigate out to wherever those are stored in your downloads or wherever they might be. I'm not going to do that and take the time. It takes a fair amount of time to bring those in. Flypaper textures are typically 40 at a time that you can buy. And it takes whatever, 10, 15 minutes, and you need it to go through that work because it's creating the cache so that it'll very quickly load those for you when you're looking at them. And that's part of the beauty of what makes this product so good, is how fast it works. So there you go. If you need to add textures, create categories, you do it by clicking on this. Now, how do we work with a texture? That can be a little complicated, and so let's see if we can't walk you through it. So I know I like this texture. The default blend mode, and blend modes are really important to doing texture work because it's the blend mode that affects how that texture is going to interface with the image below it. So if I go here, and you'll notice if I roll over these, it gives me very different looks. And that's typically what you're going to do. I can point you in the right direction, though. I can let you know that overlay, soft light, multiply, normal, those tend to be where I live. So normal, multiply, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use multiply. So now, if I bring the opacity slider over to 100%, I'm getting the full effect of that that particular choice of a blend mode with this background image. You'll notice, though, oftentimes with different blend modes, and this one of multiply, it gives us sort of a flat look, meaning it's not quite as bright as I would like it to be. All we have to do then at this point, and we'll come back to textures here in a minute, is add another adjustment. And in this case, I'm going to make a basic adjustment, and notice this now lives underneath the texture. So the texture is still there. We can go back and we can alter that if we want to. But in this case, all I want to do is brighten this up again a little bit. Maybe brighten this up a little bit. Bring this down just a touch and affect the shadows maybe a little bit. So now, let's turn that on and off. I've been able to brighten that back up to what it really ought to be. So let's go back to the textures just for a second. Notice how fast, if I just roll over these, how fast we can see what that texture is going to do. Pretty impressive, it really is. That's what makes this crazy good, is you can quickly see. And then let's say we wanted to switch to that texture. I now have a lot of control as to how that texture is going to behave. I can make that texture bigger or smaller, and so I can get just part of that texture that I want to appear in this particular photograph. You should be able to move the texture around as well as resize it. If I want, sometimes you'll have a dark spot on the right and you want it to be on the left, you can hit the flip and it's going to move or it's basically going to flip the texture, right? Or you can do it up and down as well. So you have the ability to really move and position that texture as you want to. Okay, so we covered the opacity. The opacity is how much of that texture is going to show through, right? And so let's go back to this one because I do like the Starry Night one. Okay, now watch what happens with the detail slider. This is only going to affect the details of the texture. Notice that's it's not affecting the detail. It's important to know it's not affecting the detail of your image behind it, but just the detail of the texture only. So we can make that softer, or we can make that texture come out even more. Okay, saturation is kind of interesting because in the texture tool or in Light Leak or anywhere else, If you wanted to bring, you might have, well, for instance, in light leaks, sometimes they have, purplish and reddish and so forth colors in the default light leaks. And maybe you don't want that color. You can actually bring the saturation down to 0, and then you can bring your color strength up a little bit. And now you can change the color to be whatever you want it to be. So even though this was a blue sky, and I think it should still be blue, I can still go back and find a blue sky, or I can find any other look that I want to. One more time on that, because that should be an aha for a lot of you folks. It was for me when Nicole helped me understand this. So on the texture layer, again, I'm in the texture layer here. If I bring the saturation down, it's going to bring the saturation down of just the texture. And at that point, I can bring the color strength up, and now the color becomes whatever color I choose it to be. So if I didn't like that color of the blue sky, I now have the ability to make it really whatever I want it to be. Okay, so how will I affect the relationship between my background image and the texture itself? Well, I have a mask. So for each layer that I put in here, I have a mask. And it's a simple one here. I can either none, I can do a spot mask, or a brush. Or you'll notice there's a mask down at the bottom. As of this moment in time, this mask, when I open it, operates like a mask in Photoshop, whereas if I hit the letter X on my keyboard, it toggles between black and white. You can see that happening right here, painting with black and white. And also, if I use my bracket keys, it makes my brush bigger or smaller. Unfortunately, right at this moment in time, when you use the brush here, those functions don't work. You, unfortunately, at this moment in time, they're working on it, you have to click the white and click the black, and then you need to click the strength and brush size and hardness and so forth. So if you have to do some adjustments on each layer, you'll have to work through here because you wanted to paint something out, and we'll go through that in a couple of examples. In this case, let's go to the overall mask where I have that real good functionality of being able to toggle between black and white. And for those who are new to masking, black conceals, white reveals. So the mask right now here in the bottom right is white, which means that I'm going to get all of that effect. If I now paint with black, I can paint and I can remove some of that texture. And if I use a reasonably soft, have this weight to the left, the hardness, it should do a good job of finding the edge. If I turn color aware on, it'll do even a better job of finding the edge and not bleeding over into the sky. Same thing here, I can come down and I can paint out some of that texture effect from the rocks in the foreground, and I can be left with normal gray looking rocks and green grass, and then even go up into here because the water doesn't maybe necessarily have stars in it and so forth. Okay, so we're taking a lot of time here. I'm looking at the clock and I don't want to use all of my time just on one picture. We'll use other pictures to cement some of these concepts and add a few more. So far what we've learned is we can add things by going here and adding an adjustment layer. I can add all of these choices, diffusion, edge blur, film green, all these things, and I can do it as many times as I want to. So if I want to go in and put another texture, not a problem. I go in and put another texture, and that creates something different. Notice though, the mask is being applied because it's the overall mask. It's important that if you just want to do it on that particular layer, that you're going to have to deal with the brush here and do it on each layer. So pay attention to that. Let's cancel out of this and let's move on. So let's go to this. In this case, I'm going to edit this in Photoshop just so that you can see we can do it that way as well. Okay, in this case, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to do a Command I, which is going to inverse this particular photograph. And if you're using texture effects from within Photoshop, you would just go to Filter, Topaz, and Texture Effects and use it here. And images like this, and the reason I wanted to bring this one in, images like this are really wonderful to go and build yourself. So once again, we go to, let me go back, I went a little quickly there. Top right, in this case I hit new, that gets rid of all of those presets and gives me the ability to start building an effect right away. I'm going to come in here to textures, I'm going to open up my favorite flypaper, maybe flypaper 2, and find something that's really in your face. Notice I'm in the blend mode of normal. It's really hard to see what the effect's going to look like. Whereas if I bring my opacity in the normal blend mode, if I bring my opacity to 100%, you're going to see essentially the full effect of that particular choice, that texture. But if I now come down here to multiply, now I start to understand what the effect is going to look like. So here it is with different opacities. And once again, you can bring the saturation out of it if you want to, bring the color strength up, and now you can start to choose all these different crazy colors if you want to. Add different detail. I'm going to bring this color strength down and bring the saturation back up to what it should be. In this case, once again, a refresher, I would go in and immediately add an adjustment layer, basic adjustment, to bring back some of the brightness. Now, little tip on the basic adjustment panel. These operate differently than brightness, shadow, and highlight would in a normal setting where you think of brightness, shadow, and highlight. Think about these as mid-tone, your darks and your lights, and they are separated very severely, if you will. There's a great separation between each of these, meaning that I can push this quite a ways to the right and it's not going to blow things out and affect over affect it. Same with this. It's not affecting the midtones and the brights when I do that. So you have a lot of control to really brighten this up. So see how this is more the midtones being adjusted, and then this is really the highlights being adjusted without affecting those midtones. So we can take that softer look that is being created by a multiply blend mode, which is here, and by adding in an adjustment, and in this case a basic adjustment, and using the tools in this panel, I'm able to bring the life back into it that sometime using the multiply blend mode does for you. We're going to cancel out of this one, go back into Lightroom. In this case, we're going to go to Edit in, Texture Effects. So let's start looking at how we might use the software. You can go in again up to the top right and you can look through all of the different categories if you'd like. I've started to put things into favorite areas so that I can go to ones that I particularly like. And in this case, I kind of like this distant gaze. Once again, once we find one that we like, we click on the gears here or the sliders, and that'll open up and show you what was done. And I like to turn them all off. So I go right back to my image and see what I get. Find if there's something that I like better than another. This one looks pretty good just the way it is. But if I want to, I can add to the look by adding the plus add category. Remember, any of these things I can add. In this case, I'll do a texture. Let's go down to this one and maybe down here. And now we've added, let's turn this texture on and off. We've added this by leaving it in normal. We've added that look. I can bring the opacity of that up. Obviously, it makes it only the texture because, again, I'm in the normal blend mode. So let's check to see what happens if I use multiply. And you'll see that I get a whole different look. And then I can come in here and I can say I want to do in vignette. Now it gives me a vignette panel, and I can add a vignette if I want to and change the size and transition and so forth. Paint that out if I want to with an adjustment brush. I can come in here and do a light leak and make it look like I've got light coming in from the forest on the left side. And then once I do that, this one looks fine just the way it is, but that same idea that I just went over with the textures where you want to change the color, once I have light leak up, if I wanted to, I could bring the saturation all the way down and change the color or tonality of the light leak by bringing the color strength up and then changing the color. Makes it really again, pretty powerful that it doesn't have to be what you're being shown. It can be what you want it to be. And I think this creates a really cool look and makes it look good. So let's see again this. What does the size do? Well, the size in this case affects how that light leak looks, makes that light leak look bigger or smaller. So you can adjust that, and you can flip it once again and put it on the left or right side. I don't think you'd want to put it down here, although it looks like a flashlight, I guess. And again, you can affect the opacity or the strength of that light leak coming in on this particular scene. So that's how quickly you can create a look. And you're just building up these layers to be what you want them to be. Again, you can throw them away, the ones that you don't like, or can modify those. Let's hit cancel again and move along. Just one other little idea here. I'm going to right click and edit in. Whoops. Texture effects. Okay, so just one other thought on masking here. I want to go to my favorites again. Favorited. And I think I liked this really interesting misty sepia veil because I like the softness that can be created. And by the way, diffusion is another panel you can use, right? You can do a diffusion technique. But in this case, I'd sure like to have that barn not be so soft. So let's once again open up on the sliders. Click on the sliders, and in this case, let's go to the diffusion. That'll work a little better. So I can put this here, and notice now I have a circle or a mask that's circular, but once I see it there, I can grab any point on here and change the shape of this, rotate it, do whatever I need to do. Right, I can rotate this. If I made it an oval, you'll see that better. I can rotate this. And so I can have this beautiful feathered mask for this, and I can affect the transition of that mask. This is a very hard edge. If I bring the transition to the left, if I go way to the right, it's a much softer feather, and it can be color aware as well, which does a good job. And then the density of that mask, I can make it all the way to the left. It's removing that whole effect, whereas here, it's feathering it so that it doesn't look quite so obvious in the mask, and that's what I would do here. I would bring the density over just a little bit. So that's all I wanted to show you on this particular image, is how to use that spot versus the brush. Either one of them work. The brush, it's just a different technique, and sometimes, like this image, that spot mask would be a little more effective. Okay, this Venice scene is a real funny scene, and just a real fun scene rather. A real comment on this is that sometimes you're in situations where you're not thrilled with the quality of the light, or you're not presented with what you were hoping for. And I would encourage you now forward to photograph anyways, because you now know that you have these insanely powerful tools in Texture Effects to create all these cool looks. So look how quickly we can create a look. 1950s print, the very first one, and this might have been the first picture I played with in Texture Effects, just that fast, and we have a really awesome look. So from this, which was, kind of a bland scene because the sky is, kind of boring, we can make it look pretty different here, and we start clicking through or using your arrow key, and you can kind of come through these different looks and find one that you like, or once again go to your favorites and go to something like Rustic Farm, which I kind of like a lot actually. But if we open this up, I'm not a big fan of what appears to be, and let's look, dust and scratches. So sure enough, if I turn that off, I like that a lot better. If you especially look in the foreground here, you'll see when I turn dust and scratches off, I just think that looks a little nicer. So we can just eliminate that and delete it. I just wanted to remind you, and amongst all of these great tweaks and control and strength that we have, that it's also easy to find a really good look with all of the many looks. And I think Nicole mentioned to me today there's I want to say 5,000 or maybe even 50,000 looks that have already been uploaded in the community. So people are having a lot of fun creating looks and sharing, and that'll make it even more fun. Okay, looking at my time, I want to make sure we get to just a couple of more. Let's do this. I'm going to go off track here for a minute. I'm just going to do my friend in Cuba, because we're really talking about all these textures. Let's show you just another cool little idea and see if we can't get the creative juices flowing. In this case, I'm going to go up to the top right and hit New, and I'm going to show you a different adjustment that we haven't covered yet, double exposures. So I can go to double exposures, and I happen to take another picture of the same gentleman of just his guitar. Well, once again, you got to keep reminding yourself that the default is a normal blend mode. So once again, if I bring this all the way over, all that we see is the detail of the guitar. If I bring it to the left, all I see is the gentleman that I photographed playing the guitar. In between is a 50-50 blend. Now let's see what happens with something like overlay. Well, I kind of like what overlay is doing, but I don't, because I like the fact that it's hidden this guitar in the background. It's much more subtle, but I don't like maybe the shirt that's coming over him. Let me just check soft light real quickly. Actually, you know what? I think I like soft light even better in this particular case, because I like his skin tones better, but I don't like the shirt coming down into his face. Well, that's fine, because I can just come in with my brush and I can start to paint away the shirt from this area so that it's not going over his face. And now I've just masked that out. Pretty cool, right? I think that's tremendous. So now start thinking about or adding to your creative ideas this idea of doing multiple exposures, but doing them in texture effects and having all this tremendous control over how much of that shines through, all of the blend modes to make it whatever you want it to be. And again, look how lightning fast the blend modes are. Again, we're seeing the mask really, severely there. But it's really, really a fast piece of software. We'll go back to soft light. So another creative idea, multiple exposures. Cancel out of that. Let's go here. Show you again, I like to go through a few things each time and just cement ideas here. Go to favorited here. This bleached haze, let's see here. Well, breaking waves is kind of fun. You know, it fits the theme here. Antique harvest. There's just so many wonderful right out of the box. Fading truck again brings back that. It's just kind of a nice soft look. But if we don't find something and we want to have something of our own, go again, hit adjustments. And I think in this case, I'll go down to flypaper 2 and maybe come down something like this. Change my blend mode to multiply again. Bring the strength of that over. I'm really loving that. I think that's a great look. Go in and quickly add a basic adjustment panel. Just trying to, again, show you how fast this will work. Bring the highlight up a little bit. Bring that snap back to it. Bring the midtones up a little bit. I can come in here, get a vignette. The edges coming vignetting in a little bit, and I can put that where I want to. So if I hit the center here, over here I hit the center, I can bring that vignette and put it right around the boat, and then I can make the size of that vignette bigger or smaller. Just tons of control. I can, let's see, what haven't we talked about? We did the light leak, double exposure, color overlay, similar to what we've talked about before. I can bring this in, brings up a color palette where I can choose how I want to look at this, a color wheel, and I can start to change the color this way by grabbing the color wheel pointer, right, and bringing it to where I want to, and changing the opacity of that, and so adding in a color layer to add more color, less color, what have you. Again, every one of these layers has the ability to adjust them and then use a spot or a brush. And then, of course, It'd be a lot of fun to go in here on this one and put in a light leak, coming in from maybe up above, shining down on the boat, and then do whatever you want with it. So if you have a color again, so let's just review one more time. I can remove the saturation, right, out of that particular light leak. I don't like this one for this picture. Again, we're just trying to give you ideas. Now I can bring the color strength up, and I can now adjust the color of that light leak to be what I want it to be. I think that's important to remind you that that capability exists. If I didn't want a light leak after all that work, hit the trash can, the light leak goes away. Maybe we'll start wrapping up and taking questions, but we'll leave this particular one open. Oh, somebody's asking about borders, the border feature. Let's do that really quickly. Good question, Cheryl. Thank you. There's just so much to cover, and every time I look at the time, I realize I'm running out of time, and so I'm trying to hurry through. I apologize, Cheryl. So let's just pick something color burst. We'll say that's what we like. Not bad, actually. And let's go ahead and add a border. And a whole lot of border choices here. Just scroll over a lot of these, really in-your-face stuff. More subtle things like that probably works a little better. Grungy borders, grassy borders, and on and on and on. So they've added a lot of really tremendous borders in here. And then once again, you have all the control to resize it, flip it, everything that you'd want to do, keep the aspect ratio or not. Which in this case you probably would, change the opacity of that border, and on and on and on. So the same controls that you have for any other one of these, I like to keep calling them layers or adjustments, I guess they're calling them. They apply to each one of those adjustments, and remember, you can do as many of those adjustments as you want. So let's wrap up a little bit. Think about it like a box of crayons, right? A new box of crayons with a whole lot of power and ability to make all these great creations. So with that, thanks for bearing with me with those few little trouble spots. Hopefully you still found some value today. Nicole, I think I hear you there.
Yes.
Sorry
Yes,
about all that trouble.
oh, no,
Yeah.
that's fine. Everyone is saying it's not they're definitely seeing value. We're getting a ton of fantastic feedback, and the way that you presented the program is very easy to follow for a lot of people, and they're really appreciating it. And if you want to follow John, he's an amazing teacher, has workshops all over the place, so check that out at barclayphoto.com. And then if you want to get into some of his social circles, his Facebook account is John Barclay Photo, and his Instagram account is at John Barclay Photo. If you have any questions, you can contact us at webinars@topazlabs.com. We're getting to those questions ASAP. If you have something in support and we haven't gotten to you for a couple days, we're just a little bit overloaded with the sale, so we're getting through those. Promise we'll answer you. If you want to sign up for upcoming sessions, you can do so at topazlabs.com/webinars. And you were going to say something, John?
Yeah, no, just thanks for sharing all that. Remember the website, barclayphoto.com, and then Flypaper Textures, save yourself 15% by using the code JBarclay2. And then would love to see you on Instagram. I finally succumbed to the temptation of Instagram and having fun with that, and I need lots more followers because I'm very depressed. I only have a few. No, I'm kidding. I would love to see you there and share in your work too at Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, Nicole.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.